in some of these cases. You're talking about private enterprise, state government initiatives and so on. However, I would promise to advocate for any citizen who has concerns, legitimate concerns, and advocate on their behalf, because I think that is the role of the Mayor, to represent the community. And certainly, that's something that I would take to the state government authorities and the power companies as need be.
Thank you for that, Bernadette. And across to you, Graham. Would you like to respond any further?
I agree with you on one sense, in that I don't believe it was right that consumers should have had to pay for the smart meter in the first place. I think that's absolutely wrong. Not that it's got anything to do with us as council, but just as people. The power companies were gaining by not having to read the meters. Surely they would have to pay for that's how it works. Now, if that had happened that way, surely the problem would go away, because any of you people who don't want it could say, well, we're quite prepared to have the meter read. It's even problem solved.
Okay, and going across to Sue.
Yeah, well, I think we're starting to veer into the area of a much bigger issue, which is about privatisation and what actually happened to our power companies and how these things have come about. So I'd love to have that debate. But I think at the moment, part of the problem is that a lot of people don't understand the issue in any great sense, and they feel as if the horse has bolted, and to a large extent it has. But it doesn't stop us from presenting the case for and against and letting people in the community make decisions. And I think that's got to be a principle that travels through all of these issues, this being one of them.
Okay, and finally across to you, Ron, for a response.
Okay. If you don't know much about smart meters, you'll know when you get your first bill, because they are definitely a lot heftier than the normal bill. People who install them are actually pretty smart themselves, because they did it when I wasn't home and they gave my dog a bone as well. So that kept them distracted. But I would have thought that the same with everyone else along the table here, that we, as a mayor, you would assist anyone who has a genuine cause and some evidence behind them, so without hesitation.
Okay. Thanks again to all of our respondees for the effective, quick replies to the supplementary questions there. And we now move on to the final round, question 3, which is coming from the Geelong One Fire Reconciliation Group. And it asks, will you support greater recognition of Aboriginal people in the Geelong area by approving and implementing the Karenga Aboriginal Action Plan and supporting greater local awareness of the need for recognition of Indigenous people in the Australian Constitution? So again, starting with Stephanie.
Thank you,
first.
Chair. And thanks again for the question. It's a very good question, and it's quite telling that I only had one Aboriginal friend I could call for advice on this one. But I will add that I consider her a great friend and a gift in my life. And I'll admit up front that I'm woefully inadequate in my knowledge of Aboriginal culture. We weren't taught anything about Aboriginal culture in primary school, and I've been on the catch-up ever since. I'm also fairly ignorant about the details and progress around the quest for constitutional recognition and having a true appreciation of this issue. It's an area of weakness that I would like to address, and I'm working on it. When I started at Bowen Medicare Local in January this year, I was a bit intimidated by our Aboriginal liaison officer because she had dreadlocks and was really cool, and I thought, But we clicked pretty quickly, and I could tell her honestly that I had no idea what was offensive to Aboriginal people and what wasn't, so I tended to not go out of my way to make contact. We're not exactly falling over Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in, the Geelong region, particularly not in Ocean Grove. Together we created and promoted a cultural awareness training program for our staff, and so far we've run 2 sessions this year. I got a lot out of that session, and I could probably do it 10 times before I felt any really true understanding and appreciation. But I am proud to say that I now do appreciate the issue of cultural safety in particular, and I do have a long way to go to truly understand the position of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people in our community. I understand that there's been a lot of work done on this particular action plan, but again, it's a slow process. I think we've got, heard a fabulous description of a committee that's a cul-de-sac that lures good ideas and strangles them, and I think we get a bit of that happening, and we have too many meetings in life. So it's been a bit caught up in a talk fest, possibly. And that necessarily happens when there's lots of people and weighty issues. So I'm a big fan of getting the facts and just getting on with it. Again, we can measure our baseline on this now and then set targets around how we can improve it.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, Stephanie, and moving across to Keith Bagg.
Thanks. Look, I fully support the intention and the principles behind the Coringa Aboriginal Action Plan. I spent 2.5 years of my life in the early 80s working in Darwin, working with the United Church with Aboriginal people, and I don't claim to have all the answers. You come away with more questions than answers, but certainly that was a joy in my life, and I learned a lot from that. From what I understand, there's been a number of delays with bringing this action plan into place. And it's important that all the groups involved are comfortable with the final document. But there's some key issues to be addressed here, particularly health, employment, and other issues associated with the closing the gap targets the Australian government set, and I'd fully like to see that happening in Geelong. We can do our bit in Geelong to close that gap. When the plan is finally adopted, I would hope the Council will apply it in practical and helpful ways, always working alongside and with the Aboriginal people in our community, not in front. And I'd like to see the plan's implementation certainly be given a priority by the new council. I have actually met with Tracy Curry a few months ago at Wotherong and discussed their future plans across a number of different fronts. And as Mayor, we're very happy to keep building on that relationship because it's very important.
The city, we've got the city's portfolio holder for Aboriginal and Multicultural Affairs in the audience, Eddie Conatel, who's doing a fantastic job in this area. So, welcome, Eddie. The city has a designated Aboriginal and Multicultural Affairs portfolio holder which supports the strategic direction of the Council's response to Aboriginal communities in Geelong. The major objectives of the portfolios are to set direction and support activities which enhance reconciliation and address Aboriginal issues, to advocate and act as a liaison point between Aboriginal communities and the people, Aboriginal communities, people and government, to acknowledge the cultural and economic and social contributions made by Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people, to promote understanding and our shared history. The Aboriginal Action Plan is being developed in partnership with key stakeholders. Council commits to work together in partnership to realise and promote the plan to achieve great things for our Aboriginal communities. Once all stakeholders, and that's the key, once all stakeholders agree to the plan, it will be formally presented to Council for adoption. Right now, Council is actively involved in investing in employment and traineeship opportunities, peer program focus on drug and alcohol issues, conducting Aboriginal swim programs, and many people in the room would well know that when the Rosewell Kinder burnt down, we went to the Wotherong Kindergarten, and we've now got a fully integrated kindergarten there out at the Wotherong Kindergarten, so that's a fantastic opportunity. But the short answer is yes.
Okay, thanks a lot for that, John, and across to Bernadette for her response.
Thank you. Thanks, Vicky. I haven't seen this plan, but I am aware that it is still subject to, or part of, community consultation at the moment. It's currently in draft form, but hopefully is very close to being accepted. I will support greater recognition of Aboriginal people in the Geelong area, and I understand that the plan has the full support of the current council. Differences between relevant parties involved need to be worked through sensitively and respectfully, and I'm confident that this will occur. I also understand that many of the elements of the plan have already been implemented by council, such as acknowledgement to country, to name one. As Mayor, I would support greater local awareness of the need for constitutional recognition for Indigenous Australians, which would help strengthen the case for change should the Government of the day put this to a referendum. And the success of a referendum will hinge upon greater community awareness, but we still have a long way to go there. In the meantime, I understand that the federal government will seek to legislate an act of recognition this year to generate momentum for a referendum on this issue. I understand that the issue of constitutional change has bipartisan support and that both parties support a referendum in 2013, although there are some differences of agreement that currently exist on that score. So.
Thanks for that, Bernadette, and now moving across to Graham for his response.
I'm not going to say a lot. My attitude to Aboriginals and Aboriginal groups is no different than it would be to any minority group. It could be religious minorities, ethnic minorities, it could be the filthy rich or the poor or homeless. I think decisions are made on facts and not on emotions, and that would be my stance. In fact, I feel that when influence is exerted, I tend to resist it more than support.
Thank you, Graham. And moving across to Sue Ball for her response to the question.
Well, I definitely would support the implementing of the Coringa Aboriginal Action Plan, and maybe just in response to Graham, I think we have to recognise that Aboriginal people are the first Australians, and there's been tremendous injustices played against Aboriginal people across the country. So I think the Geelong Council can play a real role in beginning to address some of those injustices. I think some of the critical things are to do with visibility. Since the famous apology to Aboriginal people, it's as if a lot of those issues have just disappeared off the agenda, and of course they haven't. In this community, Aboriginal people do not have a great deal of visibility because so many of the issues to do with education, health, and so many of those sort of things have not been addressed. And I think the council can actually play a role through implementing the plan, using some of its meagre funds towards actual programs that will make a difference, not just ones that mean that you've got a few pretend type programs, but real programs to do with raising people out of poverty, addressing drug and alcohol issues, addressing outstanding issues of injustice like land issues and those sorts of things. I think we actually have to come to terms with those, and I believe the plan would actually help in that direction.
Thanks for that, Sue, and finally moving across to Ron for his response.
This is an area that I'm particularly pleased to talk on. I've got a lot of Aboriginal friends and have many great contacts in the Aboriginal community in Geelong and also further afield in Arnhem Land, where I've been lucky enough to head up a program with my current employer between the Geelong Cats and the Arnhem Land region, which helps to develop an awareness of culture from both ends, but also promotion of really good health and education and opportunity for people from Arnhem Land. So there's a whole lot of really good things going on there, and I've grown a real affinity for the opportunities that I've been given in that area. One Fire aims to foster reconciliation and promote reconciliation in the region, and Geelong being such a diverse community, we need to acknowledge all types of diversity, whether it's race, religion, age, gender, disability, sexuality, whatever it might be. We need to have an awareness, and we're talking here about Aboriginal issues. It staggers me that in today's sophisticated society, the playing field is still not as level as it should be. It should be like that, and it's still not at a level playing field, and there should be some shame amongst us that it's not. The Coringa Aboriginal Action Plan is in process. I haven't seen it, but my sources tell me that it's been handled in a really respectful way, and there's some really good things coming out of it, and they're looking forward to seeing that plan implemented, and there's been some really good work amongst a whole host of groups. Developing local awareness in regards to a constitution is still necessary, and it's about groups working together. Along with my involvement with the Arnhem Land project, I've also worked with Watherong and Geelong Cats with Closing the Gap this year. I'm on a board for Leaders for Tomorrow, which is a youth foundation, and also on the Reconciliation Action Plan Committee at work as well. So I feel that diverse groups shouldn't sit out there on their own, and as Mayor, I'd endorse acceptance of an appropriate plan that acknowledges the owners of this land.
Okay. Thanks for that, Ron. Again, we're running very well according to the time schedule. So what I will do is that I will ask for the supplementary question follow-up, and then I'll give each of the candidates the opportunity to make a brief 60-second response to that. So I understand there is a supplementary question there from a representative of the group. So far away.
Thank you all very much. I'm Vicky Grosser, I'm Secretary of Geelong Fire Reconciliation Group. We're delighted and appreciate your responses. We're a diverse and a passionate group of Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal people addressing reconciliation. So my question on behalf of us is, how would we hold you accountable once you're Mayor to the actions that you've just stated?
Okay, so starting with Stephanie, again about 30 seconds for your answer.
Thank you, Vicky. I love an accountability question. I'm all about measuring it. You need to measure and then you can actually manage it. Look, something I'm really keen on, and it comes back to that idea of sustainability and a sustainable society, is one that includes all people. I talk to my husband, my kids, my Aboriginal friend, my gay friends, everybody about inclusion and diversity and inclusion, anyone who'll listen. In a culture of fear, I find people tend to come across as a bit angry because they're isolated. In a culture, if I'm mayor, I would like to create a culture of manners and generosity, and then people can feel free to be really kind to each other and open.
Okay, thanks a lot for that. And now moving across to Keith Fagg for a brief response.
Thanks, Vicky, and it's great work you're doing with that group. I think without seeing the actual document, but I've heard about it. Once the document is adopted, I think we need to be obviously a series of lines and points of action points in there, and I think it would be like almost all other things in the council. You need to report on that annually, have an action plan in the council organisation to actually progress these things, and then report on it at least once a year, if not halfly, to see how we're going with progress. I think we need to be proactive about that and report back to the people.
And now moving across to Bernadette.
No, I think you missed me, Jeff. Didn't you?
I did too, sorry. Not wearing my reading glasses. Sorry about that, John. Go for it.
I'm not gone yet, mate. Don't worry
Go
about
for
it. Just look, Vicky, thanks for the question. And you know, the work that you do is fantastic, and it's certainly supported by the council. But the key to it is measurement, review, but most importantly, pick the phone up and ring. That's the most important thing. Just ring me up. Simple.
Okay, and now across to Bernadette.
Vicky, your question was about accountability and how